We're good to go.
Super, superb. All right, it's Wednesday, April 5th, and this is the Wednesday, April 5th edition of the Crypto Flight Path broadcast. What are we going to talk about today, Josh?
Well, I just wanted to talk about today. We haven't really got into this yet, but I thought it would be a good idea to just give a brief overview of what altcoins are and talk about NFTs a little bit and their place in your digital asset portfolio. So if you look at, there's a couple of different ways to do this, right? And we're going to give you the 40,000 foot view today. But if you look at CoinGecko, which is a cryptocurrency tracking site, there's CoinGecko and CoinMarketCap are two of the big ones. If you look at the upper left corner here, CoinGecko says there's 10,931 coins, okay? And now if we flip over to CoinMarketCap, they say there's 23,205 cryptocurrencies. All right, that's quite a bit of difference. I don't know why there's a difference there, but what I will tell you is that whether there's 10,000 or 20,000 or 90,000 or 100,000, the key takeaway here is 99.9% of them are absolutely worthless. And, that's the big takeaway, right? Long term, 99% of these altcoins have zero value, none, absolutely zero. Now, here's why people even care about altcoins, right? Some of these altcoins will, over time, have immense value. There may be 5 or 10, right? So out of 10,000 or 20,000, that's an awful small amount of altcoins to pick from. Now, so you got to separate how you do this. Because they're going to be worthless doesn't mean you can't trade them, right? And so that's the big difference. A lot of people in crypto trade religiously, right? They're called degens or degenerates, right? They sit at a computer all day and try to trade these things, okay? Long-term value is a completely different perspective, okay? And so my position is I've looked at these things and I've looked at things that I think will have long-term value. I acquire them over time. When the market is beat up like it is now, you can come in and buy some of these unbelievably cheap, okay? And so what you look at doing is, and what I've done in the past, is all of these altcoins react to the price of Bitcoin. So Bitcoin's 4-year halving cycle in the past, and we can argue whether this is going to continue in the future or not in another conversation, has been the indicator for when these things will take off. So typically, this happens 12 to 18 months after the halving. So what I've done is, in the past, I've spent the bear market trying to accumulate projects that I think will perform well in the Bitcoin bull market to try to sell at the top. And my portfolio strategy has always been, I want to do as much as I can to acquire more Bitcoin. And so I've used altcoins to do that. People have different strategies. That's my strategy. I've used altcoins to trade, over long-term periods of time to have money to live, right, as part of an income strategy. So there is value there, okay? So that's kind of my overview of the altcoin market. And if you look at both of these, CoinGecko and CoinMarketCap, will give you the total market cap here at the top of all cryptocurrencies, which is 1.25 trillion. Let's see what CoinMarketCap says. 1.206 trillion. So close, but not exact. I think that will go up over time. You can also see here Bitcoin dominance, okay? And that's an important thing to consider, because as Bitcoin dominance increases, typically the value of these altcoins will decrease. So Ted, I think it's a good place for you to kind of jump in and give your thoughts here,
Sure.
just as a quick overview.
Yeah, I'll make a comparison that I think might help. It's something that I've developed over time, in my own mind over time, having been exposed to trading or having worked at a money management firm, a family office that traded a spectrum. There were, think of the spectrum as we called it a risk spectrum. There was ultra risky things over here, and then less and less and less risky. All of it, there was all risk involved. What I'm trying to say is, or the thing I'm trying to communicate here is, if you've thought about stocks in the past, like Microsoft stock versus say Oracle or uh, what's it, Mondelez International makes snack foods or something. Like pick any large successful, and I say successful, I mean let's call it like a financially viable business, like a Pepsi corporate, like PepsiCo or ExxonMobil or some very large business that's you would consider successful. They're able to issue shares, and people have high confidence in their that business's ability to generate revenue on a recurring basis, and the stock price is usually reflects what the open market's perception is of that company's value. Now that's a way to try to anchor your understanding here of what altcoins are, in a manner of speaking. But think think in terms of the number of publicly traded companies there are in the world, excuse me, just in the United States. You can Google for this. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of companies that are able to quote unquote go public and issue shares and sell them on the open market to people like Josh and I or you. And you can buy these from TD Ameritrade or any other licensed exchange that's authorized to do business with the general public. And the analogy or the correlation or the analog I'm trying to illustrate here is that in the same way that not every organization that is able to go public and issue shares is a viable business that has its shareholders, it has the things that are best for its shareholders in mind, is the same kind of comparison. Or before I make the comparison, just to remember that the biggest number of publicly traded companies in the world, the largest number of them, not their size, are not necessarily great businesses. They don't have their shareholders' best interest in mind, and a lot of them participate or they operate in such a way that you might consider unethical, but still legal. And the now to get into making the comparison, so flip over to the crypto ecosystem. There are the top coins like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then down the line, and I say the top, I mean the ones that have the largest market cap per coin are literally where people are voting with their money to support these. Like Bitcoin being the largest, Ethereum being somewhere below that largest number, in terms of market cap. The thing I'm trying to spit out here is that in the same way that not every publicly traded company is a great business that you would want to invest your money in, just the reality is that not every crypto project that exists on Earth today was created to deliver immense value to the public and make people's lives better. The reality is a lot of these organizations, and these crypto coins were developed by people that have nothing but profit for themselves and doing what they think is best for themselves. And that's just real life. And I'm not even necessarily criticizing or condemning them for taking the steps necessary to issue a coin, call it whatever, and try to sell it to people, because people can ultimately make their own decisions, and they do. Whether it doesn't matter what my opinion is. So I was just the thing I thought might be helpful is to think in terms of something that you might be already familiar with. The idea of a business that has employees, they sell a product or a service, they generate revenue, they take their company public, they sell shares to the general public, they have shareholder meetings. Those organizations fall into different classifications. Some are higher quality, some and most of the others are considered to be less or a lower quality as terms of investment grade or not. You can make that same observation across the crypto ecosystem about coins that are of high quality, like Bitcoin being the apex predator in the sphere, and then you look at something like Ethereum, which has a different use case, um, different structure, all these other things, and then you have everything else beyond a certain point. They all kind of blend together in terms of quality. And I would encourage people to start thinking and measuring in their own mind where they think these individual things that might be of interest to them fall on a spectrum of quality, but like one end being ultra high quality, Bitcoin being the apex predator here, and then everything else falling further and further and further away from quality.
Right, and I think that's a good way to kind of conceptualize it in your head. A lot of people have a hard time separating, cryptocurrencies. There's Bitcoin in my mind, and then there's everything else, right? And I don't really think that there's two different assets. And the reason I say that is because Bitcoin is the only truly decentralized, cryptocurrency in existence. Everything else is you can. The way I look at this is there's Bitcoin, and then you have tech, right? There's it's similar to a tech investment, right? And all these other projects, well, like I said earlier, 99% of them are completely useless, but there are projects that are building. They have great teams. They've got great tokenomics, which is, when you talk about tokenomics, you look at things like the total supply, the amount that was given to the founders, the amount that VCs have, the amount that gets locked up. There's a bunch of things you need to look at when you analyze a different altcoin or cryptocurrency. That's not for the topic of this video. We're trying to just give you a 40,000 foot view on, what these things are, and the reason why you might want to consider learning about cryptocurrencies other than Bitcoin. And again, it's Bitcoin and everything else in my mind, is that you can kind of look at these things as, when you talk about a risk curve, the further down the risk curve you go, the riskier it becomes, but also the more opportunity you have. So when you look at, a crypto asset like Ethereum that got down to $80 in, relatively recent past, like, 24 hours feels like, 5 months in crypto. Okay. So, Ethereum was $80 in, I think, 2020, right? Don't shoot me on that, but it's close, right? And so you look at these things and you say, all right, you can gauge the amount of usage, the amount of wallets that are on each thing. And you say, I believe that, this is building tech that people will use, want to use, and solves a problem, right? Or is trying to solve a problem. And I can say, all right, based off my understanding of how these markets operate and the cyclical nature of, there's our guest for the day, Charles, how these things operate, hey bud, that after the Bitcoin halving, this project may perform very well. And at that point, you can decide, I'm in this for the long haul, or I'm going to take some off the table and rotate back into Bitcoin, or do whatever you want, right? But these assets tend to perform very well when Bitcoin goes through its parabolic stages. Not all of them, right? But, it's all centered around the king of Bitcoin. And if you do this right, you can position yourself to be in a spot where you don't necessarily have to sell your Bitcoin holdings to, continue to live solely on crypto, right? I don't think anybody should do that, by the way. I think what you should do is you should have an income, right? And there's very few people that can do this full time and make, an income that's real and lasting. Now, people do get rich in crypto, but I'm going to tell you, it's like the altcoins, right? Like 99% don't, right? And this is because you have to have patience. You have to understand. I think that the reason people do so poorly investing in cryptocurrency is they have this mindset that I'm going to buy this thing that I know nothing about, completely unaware of the cyclical nature of this industry, and probably most likely completely unaware of investing in stock trading in general, and I'm going to get rich, right? And that's the mindset that people have. And the reality of the situation in this industry and in this business is, this is a long-term game. There's a lot of pain involved in your learning process. And if you're going to make it, you have to do the research, you have to put the time in, you have to understand it. And, most people just don't want to do that. And so that's why I recommend to most people just buy Bitcoin. Don't try to, go crazy with this. But again, you talk about human beings. So what they do is they buy Bitcoin, they learn about everything else, and then they get their ass tore off, right? And then all of a sudden they say, "Oh, crypto's a scam." No, it's not a scam. You just got your ass tore off because you didn't know what you were doing, right? And so that you got to be really careful with that. But when you're first starting to learn about this, it's important to kind of understand what these things are, okay, and how they differentiate from Bitcoin and Ethereum. You could refer to as Bitcoin and Ethereum as blue chips, right? There's a lot of money that's gone into these things. Both projects have been around for a while. Again, Bitcoin is different from Ethereum, and you get in all these tribes around, Bitcoin maximalism and Ethereum. I think all of that is incredibly non-productive. They're two different assets, and you can judge for yourself which one you want to participate in, and the free market will decide, right? So that's my kind of rant on this stuff. Be careful with it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't, you're not going to sign up to Crypto Twitter and put 10 grand on the first coin you see and become an overnight millionaire. You're going to lose the 10 grand. I mean, that's just how it goes. Very few people get into this. Now, that being said, there are better times to try to do that than not. Because if the market's going crazy, if you do this around the Bitcoin halvening and you have a 1 to 2 year time horizon, the chances of being successful are much greater than if you were to do it right after you had a 2021 big bull run up, parabolic blow off top. Actually, it wasn't a parabolic blow up top, but anyway, you know what I'm saying. So time is an important thing when you look at doing this too. Do you have any thoughts on what I said, Ted?
Yeah, I do. I think one of the greatest challenges for everyday people to try and get involved and participate in this ecosystem, as it were, one of the greatest challenges is that it's really easy for people, like the everyday people, to they hear about Bitcoin. Like, I'm talking about people that learn about these things mostly through what I'll call the mainstream media outlets, and things like they learn about stuff on Twitter, or they hear it on the news, or they read about it in a blog article somewhere. And you have to, what I've had to learn the hard way, because this is how I used to, I went from being a consumer of information at what the industry will call the retail level. This is where things happen in the world, and information disseminates out into the world through different channels. This is what I'm trying to communicate here. And the different channels, there are different forms. There's people text messaging each other when they learn about something that they read somewhere. There's people writing about stuff on blogs that get picked up and distributed, and the network effects of the information age, and how we're all connected with smartphones on certain social media platforms. And then the mainstream media are constantly in this never-ending struggle to find new and exciting things to throw on the airwaves to keep people tuned into them so they can sell advertising to them. Okay, that's not a rant against the system and the way it works today. It's just to help you understand how information moves from its source to the most number of people. There's a series of steps, and you have to traverse a few different across a few chasms to get to a certain scale where the information makes it into the mainstream, or to like the average person that's doing their let me put it this way: if I'm in the industry and I'm looking at information in not real time but near real time, and I'm close to the sources of these things, like I'm watching the price of Bitcoin from one day to the next, or 1 hour to the next, and I'm watching news releases as they come out. I can see that there's sometimes a correlation in price movement based on information that hits the airwaves. Uh, I may decide to go get a haircut later that week, and I'll book my appointment. And so 3 or 4 days go by, and I'm sitting in the barber chair and I'm getting my haircut, and something that I hear something come out of the barber's mouth that says, "Oh, did you hear about so and so thing? I heard that Bitcoin did a thing." And this hopefully illustrates the time delay and the path that information takes from its source, the people closest to it, and then the average person. And what I'm trying to communicate here is that it's it's a good business model for people selling things and the exchanges, because they have supply of these tokens that they want to sell to people. And ironically enough, and I'm going to loop this back around to the original point I was trying to illustrate, is that for the average person who wants to participate and thinks that, oh, I need to get involved in this so I can make some money, that's not a bad thing. But what's challenging is that they learn a little bit about Bitcoin, or they hear about Bitcoin because it's the word on people's lips across all walks of life, perhaps is one way to say it. And the point I'm trying to get down to here is that by the time the average person hears about Bitcoin, the price has usually gone up quite a bit, and that's what people talk about on average, and not a bad thing. But then they sign up for Coinbase, or they get on and they think they understand Bitcoin, and then this is just human nature. We look at the rest of the things in the ecosystem, and we say, well, if I understand Bitcoin, then I'll understand them. And I think that's probably the first like stumbling block that people get caught up in early stages in their journey. And it's an easy thing to do. I've experienced this just as a retail investor type that was catching information late in its life cycle and learning about Bitcoin, not understanding cryptography or the mechanisms like cryptography to the extent that they're deployed. And like they're saying is, you don't have to know how the watch is made to know what time it is. You look at Bitcoin, you think the price is going up, you think, okay, I'll buy that. Or you look at, and then you hear about this other one called Ethereum. Its price is going up. It must be similar. And it's cryptocurrency, isn't it? And what I'm trying to say is this cryptocurrency label gets applied to all of these different objects, these projects, maybe. And the assumption, because this is human nature, is that we try to make sense of things in the simplest way possible instinctively. And so we just blanket assume that all of these cryptos act the same way, they are the same, and that if one does something good, then they're all great, and if one does something bad, then they're all crap. And so we go through these boom bust cycles where when prices are up, people think crypto is the greatest thing that ever happened. And then when prices go down, a bunch of people lose money. They shake their fist at the sky and they're like, crypto's garbage and it's all Bitcoin's fault. And then, the politicians and the media latch onto this because that's what the crowd wants to hear. And so they start pounding on the FUD cycle. The FUD cycle begins, and this happens again and again and again and again. So you have a choice. You can get wrapped up in all that, or you can start simple, and you can start with the most widely understood asset in the class, which is Bitcoin. It also happens to be the one that people are backing the most with their wallets, literally, by putting their money into it and supporting it. And so if you start, I guess if I had to wrap up everything and just summarize what I've just said, is that it's folly and a recipe for pain if you just assume that all crypto assets are the same, structurally speaking. And if you think you're going to just like pick one or two or three, and those are all going to be winners, you might as well just roll some dice, and then you might as well take your money to a casino, because that's effectively what you're doing. And the business is the crypto industry, all of the players, same thing in the stock trading, in the stock market. There are lots of companies that are just waiting to take your money. But what I'm saying here is that if you begin at the beginning, start with the biggest and the most widely known today, which is Bitcoin, and learn about it. It'll help you understand where it falls on the spectrum. And then you start to develop a picture of how everything else somewhat sprung from that and then you can see where as things start to branch out and these projects start to they start to look alike and start to copy each other, and it starts to make more sense is what I'm trying to say, and you can turn down some of the noise on some of these things and really focus on quality, harkening back to quality. And that's what I wanted to try and
Yeah,
communicate.
no, I think that's a great way to say it. And I think basically the way I look at it is you can do this. Bitcoin is a decentralized, permissionless, trustless monetary network that is the only true counterparty free investable asset. And I believe it'll be used for international trade. Okay? That's Bitcoin. Crypto, everything else is an experiment, right? And it's not good or bad. It's just an experiment. And so when you think about where to put your money in these things, like you said, Ted, the best place to start is learn about Bitcoin, understand what Bitcoin is, understand why it has value, and then over time start to learn about the different experiments, which are not Bitcoin and will never be Bitcoin, okay? And then understand why each of those might have value, why an Ethereum or a Solana with smart contracts might have value, why NFTs might have value. We can talk about NFTs for a second. I don't touch the things. I don't understand it. I like them. I like art. I like the different collections. But I, as in somebody who's in the space, I don't have the time to fully understand why one bored ape is worth more. It's pretty simple, right? There's rarity factors and all this stuff, but I just never had any interest in it. Maybe that'll change over time. Maybe I'm missing something here. But when I look at all this stuff, do I think NFTs will be around in the next 20 years? Absolutely. They're not. The technology isn't going anywhere. There's a lot of real world use cases that'll use NFTs. Music, real estate, cars. This craze that we had of a million different collections of 10,000 pictures. I look, I think it's cool. I think it's an awesome experiment. But do I want to invest my money in it? I don't, because again, I don't understand it, right? And so, like, when we go back to the beginning of this conversation, like, I understand Bitcoin. I understand some of these crypto experiments. I understand what they're trying to do. And I can make an educated bet based off my understanding of this. That's why I don't touch. I bought one NFT and got my ass tore off. Like, it wasn't even, I think I drank like 5 beers and I just was like, oh, I'll try to buy an NFT. I overpaid for it, and then like 3 months later, it was worthless. Like, and it's like, yeah, you knew that's what was going to happen. Like, that's how that works, right? So this is just like anything else. You have to put the effort in to try to understand what you're doing. These markets are cyclical. There's Bitcoin. There's everything else that is an experiment. 99% of those experiments will fail, not because they're malintentioned. Some of them are, but there's a lot of them that aren't, that just won't work, and that's okay. Right? The free market will decide the winners and losers, and projects that can build real world usable, products will win. And so that's how I kind of approach all this. Probably worth learning about NFTs, but again, I'm more interested in the applications that the technology can do. I would rather invest in a company using NFTs to, allow artists to own their own music than buy the actual NFT. But that's because I don't understand it. Ted, do you have any thoughts on that?
I do, and I'll try to paint the picture this way, since we're talking about art in this case. Many, many moons ago, before the iPod revolution, I made music and made my living producing this this output, this recorded output that lived on CDs initially, and then we would use digital. So that was already digital, but I even started my music production career earlier than that and learned how to record on old school analog tape, like reels of tape. Uh, but this is a long time ago. But what happened that caused all this to change for people in the music. I'll just make the analogy using the music business is that you would be able to go to the store and buy a copy of an album that you liked, and you could put it in your computer. You could put the CD in your computer, and you could copy the songs to your hard drive. And once that happened, this was the pivotal moment, is that once music became distributed digitally, people found ways to overcome the in the old day, and I'll make the analogy like this: is in the old days, if you bought a record or bought a CD and you wanted to share it with somebody, you had to give it to them. You had to put it in their hand, and you couldn't necessarily make a copy of it. But now, in the digital age, a copy can be made a billion times, and each copy can be copied a billion times. And this put a big wet blanket on the music business. And the MP3 that I was listening to was fungible or exchangeable with the MP3 that you were listening to, and I could email it to you. You could email me your copy. But they're interchangeable. It was the same song. The information was to the bit identical. And so this was the idea of the F in NFT means fungible. So meaning they're swappable one for one, and you can't really tell the difference between the two. And this like a dollar I mean, at present the US dollar is fungible for another dollar. I can give you a dollar, you can give me a dollar, and I can go and we can buy stuff with those dollars, and we could swap dollars, and nobody cares. Like, it doesn't make a difference that you have the dollar that I had and I have the dollar that you had. So we're in this, but people in the art world, when they make, like if I'm an artist and I draw something in Photoshop and then I put it on the internet, it can be stolen and copied away to infinity. And someone realized, and this is brilliant. The NFTs are actually, or this idea of and using cryptography and elements of digital money with cryptography and ultra like an open ledger to verify transactions was applied to the art space initially by taking a picture, a digital image, wrapping it in a smart contract, and being able to sign it with a crypto wallet with it, and to generate a unique signature that could only come from one crypto wallet, like a fingerprint. Your fingerprint's different from my fingerprint. So let's say that I've got this little case here, and there are billions of these probably now. But let's say that I take my thumb and I stick it on here, and I etch it in there permanently. And now this case is digitally verifiable mine, and I own this. And the only thumb that can open this case, for example, is my thumb with my fingerprint. Okay. NFTs are something where you can take some data, whether it's an image, it's a PDF of a sales receipt, or it's a Word document or some other blob of data. So bits of information are able to be wrapped in a smart contract digitally, and then you take that entity, you sign it with a crypto wallet. Now you have an NFT that has a place on for example, in the Ethereum blockchain. This smart contract is written into the blockchain forever, allegedly. And now, if I want to prove that I'm the owner of that, I have the ability with my crypto wallet to be able to verify the signature as being mine. And someone else can try and manipulate that, but the blockchain rules will enforce that only my crypto wallet. So that is what an NFT is in a nutshell. It is a very clever use of technology, meaning it's taking advantage of the digital domain, information being able to traverse computer networks around the globe. It's taking advantage of cryptography, and it's taking advantage of being able to create something that is digitally verifiable at anywhere on the network, that someone owns something. In this case, it happens to be some bits of data that are arranged in a specific way, kind of like the Mona Lisa was painted once and it's unique. I arrange these bits in a certain way. Maybe it's a song that's been converted to digital. Maybe it's a picture, a scan of some art that I made that's been converted into digital. It's a unique arrangement of bits wrapped in a contract, wrapped in a blanket, a digital blanket that I can sign with my crypto wallet. That is what NFTs are. Now, human beings, being what we are, we found new and interesting ways to put these things into use, and one of them was to sell art, like the Bored Apes or any other JPEGs, and people, human beings, try to make sense of the world in the simplest way possible. So the overarching perception is that NFTs are now somehow bad because some bad apples did some things and made some money, and other people lost a bunch of money, quote unquote. I mean, at the end of the day, they were just gambling, though. You can gamble in the stock market. Does that make Google stock bad? No. It's human behavior. The human behavior component here is where we get into like the rights and the wrongs and the morality of the whole thing. But what I'm trying to say is NFTs are a clever application of technology that happens to have started in the art world and has spread. And this technology will, in my opinion, be around for a very long time. It may revolutionize slowly the way that we transact things like real estate, like buying and selling of a home. Uh, my my some certificate of something can now be tokenized on the blockchain, and I am able to keep it secure and in my possession because I own the crypto wallet that signs or that generates the signature digitally that can be verified and no one else can take it from me, kind of thing. So that's what I have to say about NFTs.
No, I think it's great. I mean, I like the idea, right? I am a fan of, digital ownership. I think everything in the world in 10 years will be tokenized, right, into some form of digital asset. And I think NFTs and the technology behind it will be the big driver of that. And so while I'm fine, kind of sitting on the sidelines and learning slowly about this, maybe you see this and maybe you say, okay, wow, I really relate and resonate to that. I'm going to go in and I'm going to learn everything I can about this, and that's where I'm going to spend my time. And that's great. Like from my perspective, I just am more focused on other things in the crypto industry. But over time, I think you'll start to see it all merge together, because when you talk about digital ownership and Web3, and the idea of Web3, right, is individuals actually owning their data, right? Instead of Facebook, Netflix, Amazon, all these giant corporations owning your data, the idea and the promise of Web3 is that content creators, individuals, can actually own their data. And I think a lot of that will be done through, tokenization and NFTs. So I think the technology is really promising. I think trying to go and buy one of 10,000, images, what it is really it's a hash that points to a transaction on the blockchain is what you're actually buying, right? When you buy these NFTs, irrespective, it doesn't matter. So I think one of 10,000, without understanding this, is a sure way to lose money. That's my perspective on it. Now, we talked about in the past, the wine company Vincent, where you can use, they use Ravencoin to show ownership. Could you make investments in different pieces of art, in different wines and gold? And yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's all related to that. But again, it's something where you have to sit down, you have to do the work, you have to try to understand it. And look, I'm still trying to understand NFTs and the place that they might fit in my portfolio. Like I said, it's something that I don't know that I have any sort of asymmetric edge on other participants in the market that are buying NFTs, so I've kind of stayed away. There's some of these other projects that I do feel like I have an edge, and that's something I wanted to say about crypto too. If you see something like on Twitter or in the news, you have no edge. It's gone, right? For the most part, right? There's some groups there's paid groups, which I hate to even say that, but sometimes you got to be real careful with that stuff, and I'm not going to recommend any. But there are people that spend a lot of time doing this. They understand it very well. But again, it's something you gotta learn for yourself. So that's kind of what I wanted to say about all this stuff. I guess it's a good 40,000 foot overview. It's I'd love to get into the weeds of all of it, but on a 30-minute to 1 hour show, it's just too much to cover. That's kind of the how I approach this stuff is, like I said, Bitcoin, and then everything else is a project, or it's an experiment, right? And so if I'm going to invest money in it, I need to understand it. and I wasn't always like that either. When I first got into this, I was like, let's go. Like, market's up, I'm riding this wave, right? And there's better ways to ride the wave than others. And what you learn is you can't ride this wave because the wave takes multiple years. This adoption and the industry is going to play out over decades long periods of time. And, you don't have the emotional or financial wherewithal to jump in when everything's hot and then get your ass kicked and then come back. It's important. If you're new to this, what I'm saying is take your time, right? Like, go slow, learn about this stuff, do everything you can to try to understand the cycles, how money flows, all this stuff that's completely foreign to any other types of market. Do everything you can to learn before you blow 100 grand on ApeCoin. Like that's my two cents.
I want to like buttress and support what you're saying there and I'll do so by making an example. I've seen it on Twitter occasionally. It's like someone who is, I don't know what their motivations are. It doesn't even matter. They'll ask a question like, if you could go back in time and to your 18-year-old self, or go back 20 years, and what advice would you give yourself? And they're the inevitable. If you're in the Bitcoin space, or if you follow people that are really heavy into Bitcoin, you'll see buy Bitcoin. Yes, Captain Obvious strikes again. Buy Bitcoin. It's easy now in hindsight, but I realized something watching these or reading these things and asking myself the same question. If I could go back in time to my 20-something-year-old self, I wouldn't tell myself to buy Bitcoin, because ironically enough, I didn't, the thing that I needed to have, which I'll get into in a second, I didn't have the thing that I needed to know to then make the decision. So, and another thing is, if an older person had told me to do something at that stage, I would have given them the proverbial finger, because of my personality was not one to take people's advice necessarily, because I was a bit bullheaded and a bit stubborn, which is just a personality trait / flaw okay, that I had as a younger person. What I would do though is I would go back in time and I would slap myself across the face and be like, look, dude, you need to learn about human behavior, and you need to learn about things like supply and demand, and how human behavior and supply and demand dynamics work together to create these confluences of events, or they contribute to these confluences that cause things like Bitcoin to exist in the first place and then become adopted over time. And you need to get beyond, you need to go beyond this idea that that people are just gonna offer up all this great information to you freely, and that by the time the information gets to you, to your point that you made so eloquently earlier, is that by the time the rest of us, like normies in the world, are getting information, it's way too late to act on it. And if you rewind back and start by understanding human behavior and what drives, there's a good saying is, never underestimate the power of idiots in large numbers. And that, I'm not calling people idiots, I'm just saying that sometimes our behavior as human beings in large numbers is idiotic in nature, perhaps. But understanding human behavior and understanding basic supply and demand, and then looking and understanding how when people buying habits. And what I mean by that is that typically when things are expensive, people are buying them, and that's a great time to be selling them. And when things get cheap, people tend to think these aren't worth very much, so I'm going to sell mine too. And it's the wrong time. And I've made those mistakes now. And if I could do anything, I would give everything that I have to be able to go back in time and tell myself these things, so that not so that I could specifically, now that I happen to know about Bitcoin, which is it's too late. It's hindsight. What I want is give myself the ability to spot these things, whatever they are. Bitcoin happens to be one that we know about now, but I ask myself the question all the time, as somebody that has worked in technology since 1997, how come I missed Bitcoin in 2009, 10, 11, 12, and part of 13? How did I miss that? It's because I didn't have the basic skill of being able to understand human behavior, basic economic cycles that are driven by supply and demand, and hearkening back to what Warren Buffett says: when people are greedy, be fearful, and when people are fearful, be greedy. If I could go back in time and give myself those things, I'd probably be in a much better place than I am now. But who knows? It's all hindsight at this point. So that's all I wanted to add.
No, yeah, and again, it's just you have to take the time and understand this stuff. And look, if all of this stuff, everything, Bitcoin, crypto, it's highly volatile. If that's not your thing, don't worry about it, right? Like, buy gold, buy silver, right? Like, you can accomplish some of the same things, that you can with Bitcoin, as far as getting money out of traditional finance system and into your own control through those assets. So look, this isn't for everybody, and maybe you learn about it and you decide it's not for you. I think everybody should own some Bitcoin. I think everybody should experiment with different altcoins. I think you should do it at a very low investment at first with the other stuff, and then if you spend 6 months on it, we are in April of 2023. The next halving is about a year away. You got time to learn, right? That now is the time to be buying some of this stuff that you think may have potential. But if you're just getting started, do take the time to kind of learn, and always, I think that's probably a good place to wrap it up too. Having said all that, altcoins are very speculative, right? And so you have to be careful with what you're doing, and that's the last thing I want to say. Like, just be extremely careful when you get into altcoins, when you get into NFTs. I don't have a problem recommending people to buy Bitcoin. I think that, to me, is the same thing as buying gold. It's a little bit more volatile, but the volatility cuts both ways. So, gold might go up to $2,500 an ounce, and Bitcoin might go to 100 grand. I mean, that's the difference. So, always keep that in mind, and as always, do your own research. This isn't financial advice; these are just opinions. So, Ted, I'll leave it there. If you've got anything else to add,
Do your own research. Think for yourself. It pays dividends.
all right.
That's
No
it.
matter what Elon says, don't